So if anybody wants me to put it up on the screen, please forward it to me. But I also know now how to let that person put it up on the screen as well. So one way or another, if that person wants that slide for reference, we can figure that out. Okay, just to let everybody. And that's Mr. Porter. Is it Puerto Rico? Puerto Rico?
Yeah,
Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico. Correct.
Puerto Rico. Hi, Mr. Puerto Rico. I'm Mark Diller. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm the chair. I'm the chair of the board. Blanche is the chair of the committee, along with Stephen Brown. So I'm in my dual role tonight as IT guy. There was a slide that you wanted to put up. If you, I can, when the time comes, I can transfer to you the ability to share the slide.
You're probably more tech savvy than I am when it comes to sharing the document. So.
Okay, then the other thing to do is, Stephen's now joined us. Stephen is the other co-chair of the committee along with Blanche. So either if you would forward the document to me by email.
Sure.
Or unless Stephen has already done it.
Stephen, Puerto Rico, this is Blanche Lawton. We have spoken.
Yes.
Several times we have met. So if we get confused, but I'm going to call you Stephen and my co-chair Steve.
Okay.
So that we can keep it separated somehow.
Very good.
Sounds good.
Okay, we are, by the way, we are now, I know it's a little early, but we are live streaming and recording is paused, but we'll resume in a second.
Mark, I sent you the document, just FYI.
Very good. I'll look for it right now. Thank you. Did you send it to Mark Diller, CB7?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Steve Brown, yeah. I just want you to, I made the distinction. This is Blanche. I explained to the people at hand why I'm not on video. Just so you know, I'm in a witness protection program, but that's a whole other story. Okay, but I'm going to call you Steve during the meeting, and our guest, Stephen Puerto Rico, Stephen, okay, to make that distinction.
Not a problem.
Okay.
You could also just call Stephen the handsome guy. He's much better.
Let's not go there. Let's not go there.
Not a problem. Okay. Well, Mark, I assume we'll wait as people sort of come on in, right?
It's your meeting. Whenever you're ready, we can start the recording.
Okay. Let me see what we got.
Well, we have a fair number.
Since I think you want a resolution out of this one tonight, you probably want to make sure you have a quorum.
Yeah.
So I was sort of counting.
Okay. All right. That's all.
Let's give it a few more minutes, Mark, but I think we're doing pretty good.
It's just 6:30 now, so.
Yeah.
Oh, Henry Dana has joined us. Henry, welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
That's you, Henry?
That is me, yes.
Hi, okay, this is Blanche. Good to see you.
Nice to, I don't see a picture of you, but it's nice to hear your voice. I recognize it.
There'll be a big surprise one of these days.
Well, Henry, we're just going to let a few more people kind of jump in. So we'll just wait a few more minutes. And I'm glad you got the memo on the green shirt, you and Stephen. Mine's slightly the same color. So we all got that.
What was the memo?
We look like twin brothers.
I didn't want to say anything, but you guys are very, very.
What color is it on for next month, Stephen?
You know what? I think we'll keep that as the as an open part of the dialogue at the end of it. So.
Great minds think alike. That's all I can say.
That'll be new business.
Yes, new business, new business.
I vote orange for next meeting.
Sounds good to me.
Orange is the new black? Okay, I'll go with that.
Are we talking University of Tennessee bright orange, or are we talking University of Texas burnt orange?
Oh, dear me.
Because it's summer, I would say the bright orange, Tennessee.
I prefer the bright one too. That works.
Yeah, there's absolutely no one that looks good in the Texas color. God bless them though. My son went to Texas rather. And honest to God, when you apply to the school, you have to log on to bealonghorn.edu.
Cool. Mark, I'm just going to resend this and hopefully you'll get it and then we'll start. Okay. Let me just make sure.
Stephen, I have the document.
Oh, okay. It might have just taken a little cyber time.
I'll bring it up whenever you're ready or whenever the panelists are ready.
Okay. What do you guys think? I'm just looking here. All right, I think we got a good enough. My suggestion is we start. So what I wanted to do is certainly introduce myself. I'm Stephen Brown. I'm one of the co-chairs. You've heard from my esteemed colleague Blanche, and she's our other co-chair. What I just wanted to do was just do a very welcome. So thanks for coming. Just to walk through, I'm going to do a few things, just touch base on the agenda, a little bit about the format, a couple of quick general announcements, and I'm going to hand it to Blanche to do some formal introductions of our speakers, as well as talk more about sort of an agenda. And so welcome to our YEL. We've got, I think, a very important agenda, and I think it's about youth. There's been some conversations at a board level. There's been a lot of activity. So really the broad focus of this is around youth and about some of the, obviously the challenges, both economically as well as socially, that is going on. I think that we have sort of quasi-committed, or I think we like to perhaps come out with a statement of a resolution. So we'll all think about that. I know that we discussed it before, and I'm thinking that as well. Just a few minutes on format for anybody that's new. It's pretty simple. We're going to let our two guest speakers both have some time to speak about the subject matter and some general thoughts. And then we will go around to the different, allow either comments and feedback. And we're pretty ordered here. So we go to committee members first, then we'll go to non-committee members, then we will go to the public. So that's the general format. A couple new things we want to formally thank. We've got 3 new members to YEL. Yay! We're very excited. I think that's 75%, Mark, so I don't know if I win the toaster, but we're super excited. Bev, Rosa, and Courtney, and I'm going to stick to first names because I butcher last names all the time. But if you guys can all wave, we want to thank you so much. We're super excited to have you guys aboard. And then lastly, I want to thank, we're very collaborative here. So each month someone takes the minutes. Ira is going to take the minutes. Thank you very, very much. That gives him privileges for the first question. And as we go into the future months, I'll be asking people to sort of rotate and keep the minutes so we can be effective. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Blanche to start the process. So Blanche, you are on.
I thank you so much. I will add my welcome to everybody who is in this Zoom process, but certainly to our new members. I see Bev is here, Rosa is here, and do we have another new member with us? Courtney is here. So you're all here and welcome, and we are more than happy to have you. I also want to welcome our 2 special presenters today. One is a bit more familiar with us because he's been with us before. The other, who is Henry Dana. Well, the 2 special guests are and presenters are Henry Dana and Steve Pointericker. Stephen Pointericker, you have been with us before, so welcome back. But Henry is new to us in a sense. And Henry, I want to say a special thank you because I know that you're on your vacation and you're making a special effort to be with us today, and we very much appreciate it. Um, Henry is Director of Youth Initiatives, the Office of Government and Community Affairs at Columbia University. And Stephen Pointericker is our long title, Deputy Director of Deputy Executive Director, Goddard Riverside. With which we are much more familiar because it's sort of in the area. And who has something that they want to present? Is that you, Stephen Pointericker?
That is correct.
Okay. But if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Henry to make his presentation first. Only because he's on his vacation, and I should be feeling a bit guilty about that, but I don't. But anyway, he knows that. So, Henry, you want to start off for us telling us about not just what you do, but I think a number of us would be curious about Columbia University's role in community service. We somehow do not associate Columbia University with serving the community. And I say that with humility, being having been connected with Columbia some years back. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Columbia's involvement in the community, and more specifically, what your charge is and what you do in terms of youth initiative. Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I want to just first say thank you again, Blanche, for getting in touch with me a while ago and then reconnecting with me more recently and inviting me back to this meeting. I know I couldn't make it the last time I was invited, so thank you. And also thank you to the rest of the committee, for taking the time out and being thoughtful enough to involve myself in this conversation. I don't want to disappoint everybody here by saying this, but I won't be able to speak to the entire university's involvement in the community, but I can speak more specifically to my office, which is the Office of Government and Community Affairs, and then also, my role and what I do as a director of youth initiatives. As you all know already and are familiar, Columbia is a very vast and big university with many different moving parts that sometimes work together and sometimes are working together and don't even know it. And so part of what I do is actually navigating that, and I'll go into a little bit more detail. But I'll talk first just a little overview of my office. The Office of Government and Community Affairs pretty much serves as the primary liaison between the central administration of the university, which is inclusive of the president's office, and the local community. We tend to describe local as like all of Harlem and even Washington Heights and Inwood. And then there's a lot of focus sometimes hyperlocally, which is Central and West Harlem, mainly because of the new campus that's in existence there and still currently being built, which is the Manhattanville campus, for those of you who are not familiar. Located in West Harlem on 125th and Broadway. So, a lot of our efforts are widespread, but as a university, but our office, we tend to be involved in most of the hyperlocal efforts, for West and Central Harlem. My role as the director of youth initiatives entails that I'm pretty much tasked with overseeing and sort of helping to facilitate any of my office's involvement in programming for local youth and young adults. And again, the term local is subjective, but in some cases it's very particular down to certain zip codes that I'll explain when I start talking about a very specific initiative that we have for youth in the community. So, you know, as I explained this to Blanche the last time we spoke, that tends to put me in a position where I'm often just connecting with various different community stakeholders, whether it be community boards and subcommittees such as yours, local community-based organizations that are also working with youth, schools in the area, churches, and pretty much any organization that is kind of dedicated to working with the same population, which for me is more specifically young adults and adolescents. So 16 to 24 tends to be the age range that I'm dealing with mostly. And that's due to some of the stipulations in the Manhattanville Community Benefits Agreement, which is a document, sort of well, quite frankly, it's an agreement with the community that Columbia University made in 2009 when they began the process of building a new campus in Manhattanville. And from that document, there's a lot of different benefits, whether it's monetary or programs or other initiatives that came from it. And one of which that I immediately started working on when I began my tenure at the university is the Connecting Youth Initiative, which is a outreach-based initiative that seeks to connect opportunity youth, also known as disconnected youth. So that's 16 to 24-year-olds who are out of school and out of work, to connect them to educational and employment opportunities that will pretty much help them get back on track. So we do this mainly through working with young people one-on-one, through case management and helping to understand their presenting problem and connect them to services that will move them along. So that can look very different from individual to individual, depending on where they're at in their current educational or employment journey. Sometimes it means that they finished high school and are not working, and sometimes it means that they're actually they may have dropped out and are looking to continue on and get a high school equivalency or enter into some sort of vocational training program. So the sky is really the limit in terms of where I can assist somebody. I'm a licensed and trained social worker. So most of my area of expertise in youth development and education comes around also referring for workforce services as well. So, you know, the large portion of that initiative is towards workforce, but there's also the educational component, because a young person will be hard pressed to enter the workforce without first at least obtaining a high school equivalency. And that is, you know, where we try to assist through connecting them to the various supports in our network. Throughout COVID, this initiative has still been in operation, but in a way more limited scope, obviously because of the lack of being able to go out and do outreach and present this program to young people or to organizations that work with young people that could utilize it. So the I wouldn't say the motto has shifted, but my purpose has sort of shifted to more of a technical assistance and content partner with organizations that are gearing up to do summer programming. So I'm going to speak a little bit more about that later on in my presentation, which isn't too long, but I'm going to also just share the link to the Connecting Youth Initiative in the chat so that anybody that wants to take a look at more specific details can do so. Additionally, our office is involved right now in 2 other workforce initiatives that are accessible for community youth and young adults. One of them is a partnership with the Columbia Business School and the Department of Probation through the Harlem Neon, which is a neighborhood opportunity network. And it is called Entrepreneurial Design Thinking. It stems from a program named Venture for All in a business school that trains business school students on how to develop ventures that solve community problems. So what we did is we worked with the professor who created that program to create a tailored version for community members that can attend this 6-week course, and they work in teams or individually to develop a business or a venture that solves a community problem. They learn all of the necessary skills that go into market research to develop their venture. And then at the end, they do a pitch for cash prizes that will go towards seed money for their ventures. So we've done a few cohorts of this, and we were hoping to do one this summer, but due to the campus not being open back up and no sign of it being open for summer, we have to push it ahead to the fall. But I did want to share about it because I think it's something that may be of interest to you all once we have another cohort that's open and you could possibly get the information to pass along. And then the second workforce initiative that my office is involved in is a fellowship called the User Research Lab, which is also another partnership with a campus entity, which is Columbia School of Social Work Data Science Division. And we also partnered with Friends of Island Academy, who is also a grantee of our office. They receive a workforce grant yearly from us that go towards funding their career center. And pretty much this is for justice involved young people that are participating in an eight-week fellowship that teaches them basic skills around user research and artificial intelligence, as well as basic coding skills. So we did one cohort recently during the COVID period, and we'll be looking to also do another one in the fall. This is a very cool initiative, specifically because, you know, our focus in my office specifically around workforce development right now is on technology and entrepreneurship. We want to be training the leaders of tomorrow on 21st century skills. And this was, you know, this and also the entrepreneurial design thinking is a direct product of that thinking, that we want to be equipping young people for the workforce of tomorrow with those skills, and not necessarily the steering them down the pathways that we have normally steered them down, which is typically jobs that involve labor, construction, and things of that sort, which are also still great lanes for people that we acknowledge, but we also wanted to provide some other alternatives through the work that we're doing. I know I said a lot, but if anybody has questions, would this be a good time, Blanche, for questions? I still have like maybe 2 or 3 more points to get to, so we could wait. Or
I'm comfortable taking question midstream, and if anybody has questions, that's fine.
Okay.
I just think, just so we're organized, and sometimes Zooms are tough. I think what we've done is, Henry, is why don't you do your presentation? I kind of take notes and ask other people to take notes for the questions. Then we'll have Stephen present. Notice I said Stephen, not Steve. And then we'll kind of go around robin, but you know, Zoom can sometimes be tough to raise hands and stuff. So why don't you go through your presentation? We'll have Stephen present, and then everyone will have an opportunity. If you could stay for the Q&A, we would appreciate it.
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, with COVID and sort of shifting my focus to working with organizations for the summer as a content partner, and also as a sort of a technical assistance partner, there's an upcoming summer program with New York Presbyterian through their Uptown Youth Hub. The Youth Opportunity Hubs, for those who are not familiar, is an initiative of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, where they took money that they seized from asset forfeitures from banks and other things, and they reinvested it into the community and awarded them to different organizations to open these youth hubs. So there are 2 in Harlem, and I know that there's this one in Uptown. So the one in Uptown is also, the partners are New York Presbyterian and Columbia Medical Center, and they also have their community partners. I won't go into great detail, but they have 5 community partners from the Washington Heights and Inwood area that they work with. And I know that they're planning to do a 8-week summer paid internship program for young people this summer. So I will be partnering with them on that. They're looking to serve 250 youth from the area to provide them with different virtual learning opportunities that they can receive stipends for participating in. And they will also be working on projects that are for the community and various things of that nature. All of the things that I'm mentioning throughout my presentation, I will also follow up with Blanche or whomever to send whatever documentation that can be spread or shared on your website or in your communications. So that is a bit of the work ahead for the summer. And I know one of the concerns amongst all organizations working with youth, and I'm sure for everybody on this committee, is around programming for youth. Once summer youth employment was announced that it was being cut, everyone was kind of wondering, what would happen, and we still don't have any final word on the restoration, but there are different organizations that have their own, their own sort of financial streams that they're using to continue on. And I know this is just one example, but I just wanted to share it with you because I think it's worth mentioning that there are organizations out there that will still be doing summer programming for youth. Obviously, it won't be serving 75,000 youth that, will be missing out on opportunities because of SYEP. But it's a start. And I hope that, somebody in your network or some young people in your community may be able to access it. I also wanted to mention that I'm a part of a working group at Columbia University named the Collaborative for Youth and Family Services. And this is a group of over a dozen campus programming partners. And also we have some community partners such as the Boys and Girls Club of Harlem in there. And we were meeting monthly and we started meeting bi-weekly throughout COVID. But this is a group of other organizations that also work with youth and families in the community as well. And I would love to share some information with you post the meeting just about what these groups are. You may have heard of some of the programs that are more well-known, such as Double Discovery, the Double Discovery Center, Community Impact, and also the School of Engineering has a few programs for the community that they are running this summer as well. And all of this information is available via a communication tool that my office developed earlier this year. We launched it early 2020, but it's in development for some while, called the Columbia University Neighbors Hub. I'm just gonna paste the link here in the chat as well. But the Neighbors Hub has a resource section that a lot of these programs and across campus that I'm mentioning, it has a resource section that lists them and the basic information about the programs that you could check that out. But the Neighbors Hub is also a good tool just for staying up to speed on different things that are happening in and around the campus community. We have a e-news that comes out 1 to 2 times a month that you will find resources in. You will also find news about events that are upcoming, and just different ways that we're staying engaged with the community. So I know that was a question that Blanche mentioned. And Columbia Community Service is actually one of the organizations at the university that is a part of our office as well. They provide grants to local nonprofits, and they actually just announced, I believe, or they are having an event on July 1st to introduce the new grantees that are being awarded the grant money. So that is a part of our community service arm. We raise money across the campus and also out in the community to be able to provide these grants to organizations. You can find out more information about that through the Neighbors Hub as well. And then, well, actually that's it for now. And, hopefully later on when we start talking about ways that we can work together going forward, I have a few ideas that I wanted to share.
I think that's a good idea. I assure you that there's going to be a lot of Q&A, and you're going to be talking into, I'm not going to say late into the night, but you'll have plenty of opportunities to add some. I did want to just make a quick, before we move on to Stephen, two quick notes. I know some people joined a little bit late, and I see some hands up in the chats, in the participants. The general format that we've done is to have both speakers speak and then kind of go around the horn and allow everyone to speak, committee members first and non-committees. I know Robert and Madeline, I see your hands raised up. Is that okay for you? Just letting you know that you will absolutely have an opportunity to speak to both. And if that's okay for both of you guys, I'm gonna allow Stephen to speak. And then again, everyone will have a chance to kind of go around and have a vibrant conversation. I did want to make, as we go to Stephen, I did forget to say one thing. I wanted everyone to know that we did reach out. I said this at steering, not everyone's at steering. And it's a comment to Stephen then, that we did reach out to various cities, agencies, including DYCD, including DOE, to ask them to give feedback and comments on the budget. We were kindly You were given the gentle no or somewhat there. So I don't think they really want to comment on anything. So I just want everyone to know that we did try and get somebody to reflect on these budgets. And to you, Stephen, as somebody who's on, perhaps you can give us anything you're hearing. Obviously, a lot of these, you're very affected by this. I did read what you had sent over, and there was sort of a challenge piece. I think there is a keen interest to understand, particularly around budgets, the challenges that you're going to have moving this year, because I think we want to add it in a resolution. So to the extent that you can tell us what you hear up to date and the challenges that it's going to affect you, I think that would be a particular interest to add. Blanche, is there anything else that you want to add before Stephen speaks?
Was that a question to someone?
It was just offering you if there was anything else that you wanted to say before Stephen started.
No, I'll save my comments until Stephen speaks.
Okay, thanks. All right, Stephen, you're up.
All right, so good evening, everyone, and thank you, Blanche and Community Board 7 for inviting me to this discussion. I was part of a previous meeting back in 2019, and I really enjoyed kind of talking with Blanche and the rest of the board members about just kind of what the work we do at Goddard, but also how I can support, any type of community work going forward. And so that offer still stands. Before I start, I will apologize if you hear background noise. I live on 145th Street and 8th Avenue, which is right in the midpoint of Harlem, and so it gets very boisterous, especially on any sunny day. And so I apologize if there's some loud noises in the background. The other thing is, 2 months in with all these Zoom meetings, I started putting on cologne. So if you can smell it, I got my money's worth. If you don't, then I'll take it back.
David.
So with that being said, so my name is Stephen Puerto Rico. I'm from Goddard Riverside. My title is Associate Deputy Executive Director. What that means is I'm a senior level director at Goddard Riverside, and I supervise programs. The programs under my portfolio includes youth and aging. So that's early child care centers, youth and after school programs, and then senior services. So programs for older adults. Goddard Riverside is a very large organization. We've been around for over 100 years. There's much more programs besides youth work, but I'm really going to focus on the youth stuff. And I can also share the presentation that I offered back in 2019 that had a much more detailed write-up about each program that I will kind of lightly glaze through during the presentation. But overall, Goddard Riverside, we serve 3,000 youth annually, approximately. And the way I term Goddard Riverside is really a village of programs. So we have 22 sites that serves 27 different programs. Most of the programs are nestled in the Upper West Side up to Harlem areas, neighborhoods, but we do have some programming in Lower Manhattan. And so, our focus really is to create opportunities for young people to connect and thrive. And so I highlighted some, and so there's a PDF that I sent that hopefully should be shared. If not, you should be able to see it eventually, but to really highlight some of the programs that we offer. And then clearly any questions you guys have later on, please feel free to do so. But some of the programs that we include, so unfortunately we have a lot of challenges going into this summer, 2020, but usually our summer programs consist of 3 major programs. We have a summer program at Lincoln Square Neighborhood Center, which is on 65th Street, between West End and Amsterdam. We also have another program at the Burning Wall Center, which is another summer camp that we offer. And then we have a Beacon program, which is our large center-based, school-based program that really supports children, adults, and older adults. So anyone from the ages of babies to older adults can come in for services. And so the camps really offer opportunities for young people to be engaged throughout the day from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. mostly, 5 days a week, to really support them with academic enrichment opportunities, as well as trips and any ways to really help them socially, and then as well as really enriching their summers. We also have, we've been fortunate over the last 3 years to have a NYCHA funded summer program, and it's called the Summer Evening Teen Program. And that program is really about opening the centers, NYCHA centers that will normally be closed during the evenings. NYCHA provides funding to ensure that those centers can be open to really ensure that youth ages 10 to young adults ages 24 can really be in a space that's around caring adults and supportive individuals to ensure that they're not, you know, running mad in the streets, but really under a great program that's really have programs that and activities that meet their needs and interests. And so we really survey our youth to really ensure that they can, you know, identify activities that they want to be a part of, and then we then hire staff to make that happen. When it comes to after school programs, those same programs run into after school programs. And so, and that includes our Bernie Wall Center, our Lincoln Square Neighborhood Center, as well as the Beacon program. I'm pretty sure that you may have heard of the Options program. So our Options program is pretty much what I call the gold standard when it comes to college access and success. So we work with first generation, hard to reach students or high achieving students who really have the wherewithal to apply to the Options program, and we offer counseling as they begin their college, the college process. And so we start as early as middle school because we want to begin to introduce them to the idea of college. And then as they enter high school, we have counselors who support their thinking, their work, developing their essays, identifying internships to ensure that they really have a very rigorous application when they apply. And then we have the access piece. So we have access and then success. So success says, okay, you made it to college. Now we want to make sure that you have the tools to thrive while in college, right? Because college is a much more bigger space, academic space, and oftentimes kids who are maybe struggling academically or really don't have those social skills will fall through the cracks. And so we want to make sure that we have counselors to really support them as they enter college and through college. And Options also offers a lot of scholarships for students as well. We also have an Options Institute, which trains teachers and guidance counselors who are in schools to ensure that they're utilizing best practices when it comes to to college access and success. I can relate to that because when I was in high school, I had a teacher who really thought that I wouldn't thrive in college because she felt that I wasn't smart enough or I didn't have enough support as, you know, from parents. And so, you know, we want to make sure that as we train teachers and educators who are working with students closely, that they're really using the best practices when it comes to college access and success. We also have a Star Learning Center program, which tutors students from grades 3rd grade through high school. And these are students who really choose what area they're struggling in, whether it's reading, writing, math, algebra, whatever it is. And then we line them up, or we partner them with a volunteer tutor. And the tutor works with them 1 to 2 times a week, one-on-one around tutoring. So it's not like homework help, it's really targeted instructions, and they have supports around that. We also have the Rise Youth Center, which is our youth program that works with older youth. So it's really about creating a safe space at Lincoln Square Neighborhood Center, which is on 65th Street. And that program really offers service project opportunities for them to really think about how they can give back. Because oftentimes, young people think that you have to be rich in order to give back to their communities or their families or their peers, when really it's about acts of kindness, acts of creativity, acts of innovation. And so we really work with those young people to develop those soft skills that are important and really work through service learning projects. We also have the Learning to Work program, which is a program that's now in its 3rd year, and we'll be entering its 3rd year. And that program is funded through the Department of Education, which is designed to create safe spaces and opportunities for students who are in transfer schools. So these are students who, for some reason, were at a previous high school. They may have failed out, or maybe some disciplinary issues, or whatever the reason, but they had some previous challenges at their high school and have chosen the Learning to Work program, which this program is located at the Edward Reynolds, Edward A. Reynolds, or Westside High School, which is on 104th Street on the west side. And so, and the program is really designed to identify staff who really have that skill set to really engage those harder to reach young adults and teen and older teens, and then create opportunities to support them academically, but more importantly, offer opportunities for them to gain soft and hard skills when it comes to workforce. And so we do identify internship opportunities. And if there are any opportunities that members here have, please feel free to let me know. And then it's a paid internship. So they get, it's minimum wage, and they can work anywhere between 5 to 20 hours per week throughout the school year. And that program also happens during the summertime as well. We also have, sorry, just to make sure I'm on the right, okay. So we also have the, that's all of our youth programs in general. So then moving forward, I kind of just wanted to highlight, because COVID has been a pretty large thing that we've had to really kind of just respond to as an organization and as programs. And so I took some time just to highlight some of the work that we've done as a youth department or unit. So that includes one, as of March 16th, we began to really bring our programs remotely, right? So it was like, as the pandemic really heated up, it was no longer safe to really run programs. It became law to not be running programs. And so quickly, we as an agency worked with our programs to start packing up and really working to be ready to engage our young people remotely. That includes our early childcare centers. So we have 4 centers that work with children ages 2 to 4. Those programs are now remotely. All of our after-school programs, our learn-to-work programs, et cetera. And each program was tasked to make sure that each week you have at least 2 days of engagement with each participant enrolled in the program, right? So, and that engagement is, maybe it's a phone call, maybe it's a call through Zoom, but really make contact, talk to families, talk to the young person about what their needs are, how they're dealing. There was a huge support needed for those students who are in school and needed help with when it comes to technology, right? Or make sure that they have the right supplies needed at homes to ensure that they can really thrive in their home environment. We also did a lot of work, because not all programs could do the work remotely. There was some actual needs for participants coming to the center. So we had to grab and go, right? So there were some families who really didn't have funds because their parents were getting laid off or furloughed. And so we had to create opportunities for families to come to centers to do a grab and go meal. And that was a partnership with our home delivered meals program, because they already delivered meals to our homebound seniors. And so this allowed an opportunity for the meals to be delivered to our centers. So therefore we can have families come to the centers and do a grab and go. Some families also receive meals directly to their homes through that partnership. For our senior centers, we closed, and clearly we had, we continued that work of engagement. But what I will applaud our youth staff, because many of them became underemployed or less employed, they then were deployed. So staff who would normally be in an after school setting, they volunteered, and then we started to pay our staff to visit seniors, go by those homebound seniors who will normally be at the senior centers or engaged somehow through our senior centers, to deliver meals, deliver any type of resource that they need, that they may need in their homes. And then clearly making sure that they did it in a very safe way. We also have a pretty large community arts program, which is our program that really offers arts programming and activities and shows in our Bernie Wall Center on 91st Street in Columbus. And so many of those shows we put virtually online. And we also created some classes. So then we had ballet online virtually. So the students can log in and get some tutoring or some training from a ballet teacher. Some of the challenges throughout this process, one, managing safety protocols, right? Ensuring that we make sure that our spaces are safe, that they've been cleaned thoroughly in the right ways, making sure that when staff do go out, they have the right safety measures, including masks, gloves, etc. Quickly moving, right? So it wasn't like a month process where we kind of sat for a month, planned, and then we went remote. It was quickly. It was like within a few days, we got to do this, and we made it happen. Another challenge was food security. You know, it was amazing how within the first week we would hear from families about how many of them were really struggling to keep food on the table 3 days a week. I mean, three times a day. The deployment and management of staff. So we had a lot of staff then going out into the field to deliver services, really kind of coordinating and managing that. There was a huge need in regards to social emotional support, right? So now families are at home. Now they have to deal with the pressures of this pandemic, and maybe members are getting sick, people are dying, and so there was a lot of need for creating opportunities and spaces for parents as well as young people to kind of talk through their concerns. And then our staff. So our staff were, whether they were on the front lines or working remotely, they also had to deal with a lot of different trauma, but yet still had to respond at work and perform at work. And so so that was a huge challenge. And then ensuring participants had technology. So DOE did a lot of talking about how all kids had technology, when in fact, when we did our survey to young people, maybe 80% of them actually had technology. So many youth didn't have the tablets or computers to really do their remote work. And so that was a huge challenge for us as well. And thankfully, Goddard was able to kind of find ways to close the gaps. We also dealing with the slow to unclear communication. So Stephen, as you said, we reached out to DYCD about budget concerns or whatever else. And that's been our process and feedback most times when interacting with them. Just really not being clear with what's happening, what should we be predicting, how can we get support, what's the funding going to look like, what are the requirements to do the work remotely, right? So we had to kind of just go with our own expertise and through trial and error, and then eventually begin to crystallize those best practices. But in regards to the funders and city agencies, they weren't as ready as we would have liked them to be. And then clearly, with the murder of George Floyd, there's been another sweep of challenges, both emotionally, as well as challenges when it comes to how do you engage people, how do you talk to young people about this, what's going on, how can you help them raise their voice to the situation, and so that's been a challenge as well. And then it's Pride Month, and so for many young people or young adults who are LGBT, identified, and usually during this month they would celebrate in different ways. We've in many ways kind of silent their voice because of this much larger issue between the pandemic and now this recent racial tensions. And so that's been a challenge. And then summer programming. What is our funding going to look like for the summer? We still don't know. We got an email from DYCD a couple of weeks ago with our Beacon program being cut by 20%, right? So based on DYCD, they expect our program to be a 10-month program. So no summer programming between July and August. So we get it, social distancing, there are some challenges. We don't know what's going to happen when it comes to maybe a second wave. There's a lot of engagement with protests and stuff. But at the same time, with that budget cut, what they're asking is, we can't even bill for any administrative costs during those 2 months. So normally we have a director, we have assistant director, and those are the people who usually do a lot of that program management to ensure that we're ready to go during the school year. Who's going to meet with the principals, during the summer? Who's going to engage? Who's going to respond to any contractual obligations that are needed during the summer? So clearly, it's going to fall on probably me, but it's a huge. But we've been really pushing back to find ways to get YCD to at least fund some administrative support in order so therefore we can stay in compliance and be ready when schools do open. So
Stephen, if you mind, if we could, we're gonna do a robust sort of Q&A, and I was thinking maybe timing wise, if you had a last point, but I thought that could be a great jumping off spot, just because I know that everyone is eager to talk about budgets and the challenges that you just meant. If there was a couple things you wanted to wrap up, it'd be great, but it'd be great to move on. And again, I'm sure that you're gonna have lots of questions for both of you guys. So if
Absolutely,
there's
yeah,
any last comments, but we'd love to move into the Q&A section.
Yeah, so I'll just go down to the last part of the question. So Blanche asked me the question, how can CB7 participate or contribute? And so I have three areas that came to mind, but I'm pretty sure more will come through this discussion. So one is support advocacy efforts, right? And so, we partner with UNH, which is the United Neighborhood Houses. They're the umbrella agency for settlement houses. So we've been working with them very closely to really raise the voice and concerns about not having funding for youth, especially during this summer. Two, create opportunities for CBOs to share best practices, right? So I'm sure there are other CBOs in the area who are doing some great things, who are finding ways to make things happen. And so rather than recreate the wheel, maybe CB7 can create a platform for us to come together and really share those best practices. And then the third one that came to mind was, connect Goddard to any type of resources that are out there when it comes to meeting the needs of our young people and their families. And that's technology, clearly the huge need now for social and emotional support, food and supplies. So with that, I'll end, and I'm pretty sure we'll have a great conversation.
Great.
Thank you for the time.
Well, thank you, both of you, Stephen and Henry, appreciate it. And what we want to do is to sort of start a conversation. I'm going to allow Blanche, my co-chair, to start out, and I'll sort of create an order, and I may break the format a little bit for some certain privileges, but I thought to have Blanche start out, and then Ira, who's taking notes, can go second. So Blanche, and I'll hand it to you for any questions that you have.
First, I want to thank Stephen and Henry. I think we've heard more than I was expecting, and more questions than I think we can raise tonight. The first thing I want to say is a CB7, our catchment area ends at the south of 110th Street. And we know that Columbia University essentially would be north of 110th Street. I think that 110th Street is a artificial barrier. Our constituents are mobile, and I think our relationships have to be equally mobile. So I am hoping against hope that Stephen and Henry can somehow make connections. I already introduced them virtually last week, but make connections with each other, because I'm sure there are things that they can share, discuss, shape, and I think that was part of Stephen's last comment. There are resources that are north of 110th Street under the CU umbrella that Goddard and other community-based organizations south of 110th Street could make good use of on behalf of our constituents. So Stephen and Henry, I'm going to sort of maybe ride you a little bit over the summer to keep in touch with each other. I hope it's possible. The other thing I wanted to respond to Stephen, when he raised the question of DYCD, I think I mentioned in a memo to our YEL committee that I had been in touch with Alexander Betancourt, who is a director of DYCD, who was invited to be with us. He didn't decline because he's in negotiations over that question of budgets. But he has committed himself to be with us, I think September, when they'll have a clearer picture of the monies that are available, are made available through the city council, for one. One of the things that he did say is that the DYCD budget, and this has been raised by certainly Amy and a couple of other people in many of the emails that have been going between us, DYCD budget has been cut. Stephen, I think you said 20% overall, I think according to Mr. Betancourt, it's 50%. So they are fighting very hard to get back some of that money. He also said that half of the DYCD funded programs are in our schools. So the other part of what YEL does is school-based. So we have to be concerned about that. I don't want to take up too much time because I know that a lot of people may have questions, but Stephen and Henry, I am exhorting, short of imploring you, to stay in touch with each other, because I think there could be things that would be mutually beneficial to both what Columbia is doing through their youth initiative program and what Goddard is doing. And if there's anything that I personally can do, or certainly that CB7 can do, don't hesitate. In terms of your visual presentation, Stephen, if you could make that available to us, we could certainly consider putting it online from our CB7 office, because I think there are organizations and individuals and agencies in our CB7 community who don't have a clue as to what Goddard does. And I think if we can get it out to our mailing list, which is extensive, it would be useful. You could send that to me. You have my email, and I could get it onto the CB7 office. Stephen, that's for you. And also, Henry, if there's anything you want to send on to me that you'd like CB7 to get out electronically to our extensive mailing list or other contacts, don't hesitate to do that. And I will shut up at this point, but I do have tons of other questions. But Steve, it's yours.
Thanks. And if we have time at the end, we can kind of come back. But let's hand it to Ira. I know you're eager and excited to have this meeting, so we'll hand it to you. And again, thank you for taking the notes.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, I have two questions. One of them is more factual than the other. We don't know how the budget negotiations are going to go. We're obviously very concerned about that. I'm not expecting the feds or the state to come through with anything, and the city is going to do what it does. And there are two things the city can do. One is find money for these programs and some nook or cranny they haven't looked at before. And the other is some reallocation of budgetary resources that have been discussed that were maybe formerly hiding out in NYPD, and repurpose dollars there. Assuming that there are significant additional dollars coming your way or July 1, because that is the earliest I can imagine them coming. How long would it take you to get a program up and running, and how long would it take you to get a robust program running? That's my first question, and then I'll ask the second question after I.
Yeah. So I thank you for the question. I think it's not an easy question. And the reason why is because it really depends on, so clearly we have to follow any type of social distancing regulations, right? So that's the most important piece to this conversation, right? But in addition, I understand that there's a huge deficit, right, for the city, for the state, because of the pandemic. It makes sense. My challenge has been, and Goddard's position has been, there are ways that that DYCD and other city agencies can find funds to ensure that you create some opportunities for young people. right now, what's on the docket, what's scheduled to be happening for the summer for young people is this, nothing. So all programs that have a summer component is not scheduled to be funded at all, nothing, right? Not even SYP, right? So there's been ways, and we've been talking about it for at least 6 weeks now, where we can do a hybrid of a summer program, right? So maybe most things will still continue to happen during the, through Zoom, through these, media platforms, but then you create some opportunities for in-person activities, right? Following social distancing. So maybe you come together and you bring 10 students to a large space for a discussion because they're dealing with a lot of stuff, right? Whether it's the pandemic, whether it's now the stuff with, Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to unpack. And they don't have those trusted people that they normally would have to partner with them around that discussion. DYCD right now is saying that we're not funding any summer programs. You can't even have directors who could just be there just to make sure we're ready for September on any type of budget, right? So then September comes around, now you want a program to start when? Because now we have to hire staff, we have to train staff, we have to talk to the schools, right? So there's so many pieces that will be needed in order to ensure that we're ready to go, which may take 6 weeks. But in regards to your question, how ready? I think we're ready, but I think Garden is ready in position to run some hybrid programs. But we need to know sooner rather than later. And my fear is they'll say on June 29th, oh, guess what? Here's a pocket of money that you have after we've already furloughed or laid off all our staff as of June 19th, right? And so that's the challenge. I'm not sure if that answers all your questions, your questions fully.
That's kind of my concern. They call you up July 1 and say, here, we have some money, open up tomorrow.
Right.
And that's not going to happen. It's
Correct.
too optimistic.
Yeah. And just to add to that, and this is really important because historically, there's always going to be an uptick when it comes to criminal activity, violence, et cetera, amongst young people, right? We know that when it gets hot, young people go, this is what they do, right? So this is that much more important for them to have these outlets, opportunities to engage. Maybe not 5 days a week, but there should be some opportunities for them to come together or funding to continue virtually. We can still do it virtually, but the way the city is putting it, nothing is funded as of right now for the summer.
Okay, then the second part of my question is more hypothetical. I want a little bit of out-of-body experience here. I'm 19 years old. I might have finished high school. I might have just finished high school and scooted by. And now I'm trying to figure out, what do I do next? How do I do it? And and you have a whole host of programs that could support me. So if I got involved in one of these programs, what would the course of a week look like to me? I'm just trying to get a better understanding of what it is that you do in that regard.
So with that program, I mean, with that type of need, so one of the things we've had over the last 3 years is a summer evening teen program, right? And that program targets young people and young adults ages 10 to 24. So if you're that 23-year-old or 20-year-old who finished high school, we're going to have youth workers who are very familiar, very comfortable with working with your type of demographic to, one, assess, what are you interested in? What do you want to do? Are you a good cook now because of the pandemic? Are you into fitness? Like what it is, and how can we then tailor that into a professional a pathway for you, right? And so beginning to have that conversation, because unfortunately, and I think we can all relate to it, we don't understand how skillful we are until someone tells us, right? And so even when you're a 16-year-old babysitter, you don't realize that you know what, that's a skill set. And guess what? You can really apply many of those skills you're applying in that job, babysitting your younger sibling to an after-school program, right? So then how do you then take those skill sets that you've learned and been applying to really make it into a profession in many ways? And so, but the program is designed, and what I appreciate with the NYCHA funding is that which is right now not going to happen as well. You know, it's about the needs of the young people, right? So we don't have a script and go, okay, young people, this is the program, you show up. No, it's what do you want? Okay, that's what you want. We're going to hire these staff to make that happen for you. So if you want to do basketball, if you want to do ballet, if you want to do trips, whatever it is, we have the funds to make that happen, right? So it's about meeting your need, not saying, okay, we're the experts, we know what you want. It's no, what is you want, and then we'll make that happen for you.
Okay.
I just wanted to sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Go, Harry, go ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna piggyback off of that just to say that I agree 100%, and it's just sort of like a math equation that you're sitting down and figuring out with Ira, who's a 19-year-old in this scenario, and just knowing the resources that are right there for them and how to access them, and really just pointing them in a direction and supporting them throughout it. So with the Connecting Youth Initiative that I mentioned earlier, that is pretty much our case management model, where it starts out with a needs assessment that assesses currently what your need is, not what your need was last year, what your need may be next year. It's about currently right now, and given the current state of your life and what's going on in the world, what your need is and what you have, what skills that you feel like you can further develop that could lead you to the next stage, whether that's employment or some sort of educational opportunity or training. So yeah, it's just sitting down and doing the math with them. In this case, it would obviously be through Zoom or some other virtual platform, unfortunately, until we could get back to, meeting in person again.
Okay.
And the bigger piece of that is that you need that trusted individual, right? So,
Yeah.
we spent months and for some young people years to really develop that relationship. So now there's going to be a gap, and now we have to kind of readjust ourselves to get them to recommit to the program, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll give Amy an opportunity, and just so you know, I asked Amy to share just a little bit of her background, and you realize that she has a tremendous amount of domain expertise. And I know that over the last month, she's been very passionate to have this conversation. So Amy, go ahead.
Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm talking. Sorry. So I am the center director at the Children's Aid Frederick Douglass House Community Center. Know you guys well. Done a lot of work with you. I think everything that Stephen has talked about has been one of the biggest crunches for not-for-profits. Now, we both happen to work for pretty large not-for-profits where we are not going to be impacted quite as severely as some of those smalls that those contracts literally was how they funded and paid their bills. But with that being said, just in addition, DYCD has cut from anyone who has Compass, Sonic, all of that. It's actually 22.5% of their budget for the summer. And that is with them also unclear about what the winter will look like. There are a lot of conversations about how they are going to cut programs, especially low performing programs, in order to cover the piece. It's a really big concern of what it's going to look like. I think Stephen is dead right. Not-for-profits at this point are going to furlough staff. We know that there is 14,000 to 20,000 that will be seeking unemployment on July 1 because they've now lost all of their jobs in these worlds. And we're not talking just, most youth workers working in social services are from the community. So that is, again, our communities being drastically impacted by these decisions. Obviously there are social emotional concerns that are going to be a big issue, but there's an even bigger issue in these communities, which is summer learning loss. And on an average summer, children lose 1 to 2 grade levels, possibly in reading. The prediction for September is that children can be as far as 3 grade levels behind because of what has happened since March 14th. So summer programs, this is what we did. We kept that summer learning loss from being, maintaining it or not losing or hopefully growing. So this is a big problem across the board, and it does need to be addressed. DYCD is talking about laying off their own program managers because they cannot continue to fund them if they have this. So then you'll have nobody at the helm to, even if magical money showed up. It is forcing not-for-profits to dig deep. At Children's Aid, we have been blessed that every single one of our community schools and every single one of our centers will be running a virtual camp this summer. And when I tell you it's on change, I literally mean change came out of our pockets and we're running it. Unfortunately, the other piece to this puzzle, and Stephen, you talked about social distancing, but there's another piece to this puzzle, which is many not-for-profits insurance companies will not give them the money or even say, we will cover you for the summer. So that puts not-for-profits, even if they were ready to go with money, in a situation where they are liably responsible now because they do not have insurance. And that is a big problem as well. Obviously we're very concerned. Stephen, you talked to the technology gap is a huge one. The educational gap of the kids' parents that we deal with, that's another huge one. At this point, we are tutoring 20 to 30 kids twice a week just to get them somewhat on par, or even to be able to finish the homework that they've gotten. So it's a very troubling. It's troubling for older youth, but the real issue is between 2 years old and 14 years old. They have lost everything at this point. They're not capable of being home by themselves. Their parents cannot enter the workforce without it. And come September, if DYCD does not come up with a plan, we will have parents who continue not to be able to work because they cannot work on alternate schedules. It doesn't work. We are asking DYCD to think about our holiday program schedule, which is when schools are closed, we're open, so that we have the ability to help them do that and cover so that parents can go to work. The only other thing I wanted to add is SYEP was restored to some degree. They have restored a huge portion of funds to work with select NYCHA facilities. Unfortunately, none of ours are on that list. As well as with vulnerable youth and youth that are in foster care. So there is money. Children's Aid has, instead of the 30,000 we deal, we got 3,500, but it is something that at least will help. It's not live, it's not in person, it's going to be through Zoom, working in those type capacities, but at least it is somewhat of a little bit push forward. But the real push in my mind is we need to ensure that elementary schools and middle school kids have programs to go to and that childcare centers can open. Thanks, Stephen. Steve, sorry,
Great.
Blanche.
We all got confused, I got to tell you that. Okay, well, thank you. It was very, very helpful, Amy. And, I could see in your face, the passion that you feel, and hopefully we can come out with a strong resolution, and to what degree that can help would be fabulous. I threw in the chat that I was going to break a little bit of our format, and I wanted to allow both Madeline and Robert to speak. So Madeline, do you still want to speak next? And if you do so, you can speak next. Great.
Okay, I unmuted myself. Great. Well, hello, everyone. Henry, this question may be directed towards you, but Stephen, you could come in there as well. You were talking about the programs you generate and where you engage with the youth through schools or different programs. With the coronavirus, my concern is the kids that don't enter those programs, and they're in front of my window all night long drinking, and and these are youth. These are like between 14, 17, 18, 19, around there. And it's unfortunate that no one talks to them, because they're going to be opening up restaurants next week. And I'm concerned that they bored, have nothing to do, and they're going to be wandering the streets. And I think, Stephen, you mentioned that these what kids do, get in trouble. They shouldn't get in trouble. It's not what they have to be taught in a different direction, which only the kids that get that most supportive system is through different schools and different programs. But we have kids that are left out. The young man that just got shot, he talked about, he had a video where he expressed how he just got out of jail and there was no support system to to navigate through where he needs to go. This is the same thing for the kids, and I think it's worse. You know, how are you guys, or anyone can speak, how are you going to reach the most vulnerable youth, not only in the city, but in the country? They're the ones that get in the most trouble because they have no guidance. So how do you deal with that situation?
I'll take it first, and I would just say that, you know, that is a very valid and strong concern, you know, that I share as well, and that is specifically the population of young people that I want to work with, and seek to engage. And really, the only way that I'm able to do that is through the partnerships that, you know, I'm able to form in the community, because we have to form sort of a safety net of individuals that are out in the community doing outreach, that we are all sharing information for our services. So I did mention that we do outreach through schools and through organizations, but those youth that are not connected, we rely on the young people who are connected to them to bring them in. You know, and as I mentioned, I'm in an office that is mostly outward facing. So, you know, I have to work with different organizations in the community at their sites, or at their, whatever their events, when they're out, when they're able to provide outreach through their own physical events. That has shifted dramatically because of COVID, no doubt about that. And it's a challenge that I think even Stephen sort of spoke to when he was mentioning the challenges that they face. So I don't have the magic bullet, but I know the only way to do it is through us all working together, so that we can share resources. If I'm not physically present for those young people that you're mentioning outside of your window, that somebody else that is physically present or passes them by, they have the resources, or they know exactly where to point them. So I think that's a part of our conversation
Okay,
tonight
before
as
Stephen
well.
answers, have you ever thought of outside of the box? There's many athletes and celebrities that grew up in Douglas houses, and many of the developments. I think we have to reach a broader audience in order to help these youth. They want to help. We got to tell them what we want.
Right.
Madeline, I'm just going to cut in for a second, because Stephen brought up this program also, which was the NYCHA summer program. It was developed by de Blasio in helping and trying to help police relationships with exactly the kids you're talking about. And it ran from 3 o'clock until 11 p.m., 7 days a week. And our gym, and I'm sure Goddard's also, was packed. And when I tell you the police took off their belts, off their uniforms, were playing basketball. I had one police officer in that summer did every single one of my, going into 12th grades, college applications and college essays with them. That's the type of program, and I know it can't be indoors for other issues, but we need to advocate for that type of program to come back. That's $100,000 that were cut from all of our budgets, and only 13 sites had it the first year. They dropped it to 9 because the others were not successful. That's the type of programs that we need and that make a difference, especially in Douglas, in, you know, our other NYCHA facilities that help, you know. And in that, Madeline, is you have those people under your window, and I know them all very well.
I know you do.
By name, but they then are going to start recruiting our younger kids to say, hey, stand on that corner and tell me if the police are coming. Well, they do what I call street pharmacy.
Exactly.
You know, so I think that it's a twofold. It's thinking about what we have in the outreach and the connections we have, but it's also a program that really actually worked, and it was money well spent.
Yeah. So just to add to what Amy just said, and thank you, Amy, for that. You know, the Summer Evening Tea program was not just about getting the participants, the harder to reach youth into the centers, but you had trusted people in the community who were working at those centers, right? So they were the ones who, while on their way to work, were sweeping up those harder to reach youth. Yo, come to the gym. Yo, come to the class. We're doing a beat making class, or just whatever it was to kind of get them to come into our doors. And so, you know, and so I will add that to the other programs that DYCD funds, you know, whether it's Beacon or Cornerstone or Sonic. Those are community young youth workers and adults who are trusted in the communities, who oftentimes spend a lot of time doing that community outreach to recruit into those centers. And so not having those funded programs for the summer is going to be a huge loss. I also wanted to just follow up with what Henry talked about when it comes to youth opportunity hubs, because my previous work was at Union Settlement that currently has that contract. And so, that program is really vital because it really is for those young people and young adults who are most at risk of criminal involvement, right? And so the activities and programs are tailored for that harder to reach population, not the high achieving ones. It's really the ones who are most more harder to reach. And so for me, this morning, I emailed all God Riverside staff. This is a great resource. I sent them the link to Union Settlement where that page is for that program. So therefore they can begin connecting those young people who can really benefit from that service, considering most likely we won't be funded for the summer.
So from you two guys, can I get a positive confirmation somewhat that if the youth are getting out of hand with the restaurants opening, would you all come together and try to find something that will help with that situation? I don't want to see them in jail. I don't want to see them killed. We need a strategy for if that does happen.
So my response is yes. And even now to this day, we're looking at some innovative ways that we can use some resources to kind of ensure that we have a safety plan, because there's going to be a tick. There's going to be an uptick. We have young people who have been indoors for 3 months already, right? And so even the adults are wilding out, right? So now we need so imagine what teenagers are going to do once they really get the opportunity to really hang out in the streets. And
they're angry.
They're upset. That there's a lot going on, and they haven't had that emotional support, social and emotional support over the last 3 months. So right. What happens next Monday, on Monday when the streets really open up? It's going to be a huge challenge. But yes, I'm on board. And if there are other opportunities that Madeline, that you may hear about, please feel free to email me. I will be there and let's talk.
Okay, great.
And I'm on board as well. Any ways that we can support, and Stephen, I would love to talk to you, in a side conversation also about just like different ways that we could strategize around outreach that's necessary.
Could y'all work with Amy too?
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Madeline.
I didn't mean to leave you out, Amy.
Thank you, Madeline. Just a little note. First off, some of these issues sort of stride between stuff that HHS does, and we were going to try and maybe do a dual meeting. It didn't come together, but I want to point out that Catherine and Shelley are going to have on Thursday the 25th at 7 continued these conversations about youth. It's about youth health and engagement. So it's sort of an extension into some of the things that Madeline just said. And I would encourage everyone on the YEL committee who's passionate about youth, and I think we all are, to try and attend that. So I think it'll be a great extension. And again, I think we see a lot of people from HHS, and I appreciate everyone showing up. And I encourage us to go to that as well. I know that Catherine's going to send out a flyer with some more details. So let's look at that. And with that, Robert, I know you've been very patient, so I appreciate it. And let's have you give your thoughts.
I'm patient because I'm the oldest one, and by now I should have learned my patience anyway.
Well, I thought it goes the other way. When you get a little older, you get impatient. But I appreciate that you're how good you are. So thank you.
My question is essentially for Henry, and it's got its own resources, its own universe, and it's a massive enterprise, and with an extraordinary reach. And so one of the things I'm wondering, Henry, is that what are your numbers? What capacity are you designed for of young people? What is your target of young people? Then the second part of the question is that you alluded to the young people that would have opportunities in the, maybe was a workforce program up at Presbyterian or something, where they would get a stipend. Now, what about stipends for the other young people that you're working with that are not part of that particular workforce initiative? Is there anything for that? And then the third part is what Blanche was alluding to, and connected to my original observation, Columbia is absolutely new to students. We don't have to go into that because of several Columbia people, you know, in the panel. What is your outreach? Do you have what we used to call in the 60s, do you have a catchment area? Or is that passé concept? That, so for example, you're gonna have a lot of visiting young people from different states and that are gonna be living in the immediate Columbia University area. Would they, for the summer program, would they be eligible to participate, to kickstart, let's say, their interest to get back to work in September and so on, wherever they come from, Iowa, Alabama, or wherever. And while they're at it, earn some summer money. And when I say that the thing that is so important about Columbia is that it's got its own reservoir, its own resources, is that a stipend especially in a time, and I think that, I'm sorry? Are we okay? Can you still hear me?
You broke up for a minute there, Robert, so just go ahead.
I was going to say, if you want to finish up or let Henry speak, but you're starting to cut off a bit, I think.
Okay, so that's essentially my question, Henry. And on the stipend, generally, not just for those who are committed to a particular institution, where the institution may kick in a few dollars, and also where you're recruiting your students from, and what is your capacity? Were you designed for 100 students, 150 young people? What are your numbers?
Thank you for the question, Robert. I want to, I guess, first just start by, again, mentioning that I can't speak on behalf of the whole university, right? I'm speaking on specifically on the work that I'm involved in within my office. And as far as capacity, we are working on scaling up all of those two workforce initiatives that I mentioned to you, which was one about entrepreneurship and one about a fellowship. We're working on scaling those so that we can have several cohorts operating at the same time, but we're in a testing phase with both of those. So our capacity was limited to smaller cohorts between, you know, the smallest for the fellowship was about 6 to 8 young people. And then for the entrepreneurship class, 25 at a time. With the Connecting Youth initiative, we don't have a specific cap or capacity size, but it is a smaller program in the sense that I'm the person that runs it and provides the case management services. We are not specifically a direct service organization, but we scale, or we try to have a greater capacity through our strategic partnerships with the community partners on these initiatives that I spoke about briefly. I hope that answers some of the capacity question, but the bottom line is that it's only limited based on the size of a specific cohort, if it's a cohort-based program. But if it's a program such as the Connecting Youth initiative that runs year-round, the capacity is open, you know, just depending on how many young people I would be working with at the same time. We also scale in capacity through group work, so running workshops with organizations in the community, or even at Columbia University, I've hosted some workshops for organizations to bring their young people, workshops that are centered around leadership development and soft skill development. So that's another way that we can reach more young people when we have groups that are already have some sort of structure and they want to receive the resources that I can offer through the programming that I mentioned. The second question about the stipend, I wasn't 100% sure on what, I wasn't 100% clear on the question, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you wanted to know if there was any way that participants can receive stipends if they're not in a program that is offering a stipend. Is that right?
Well, I meant everyone. Yes, that is absolutely correct. That is my, you're correct in that read, yes.
Yeah, so the short answer is no. But for somebody that was not able to be in a program that they can earn a stipend through, we would be looking at employment opportunities at the university, or outside of the university. We have an employment center. Sorry.
That's equivalent. That's certainly very strong. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, part of my role is also as an employment specialist, so to speak, in the sense of building job readiness skills with individuals that I work with on a one-to-one basis, or even in a group basis, and I can make referrals to our employment center, which is then able to help them get their applications submitted into our system for positions that are opening up. So that's the flip side of, if they're not in a program and they're job ready, or maybe they need to get job ready, we refer them to training, and then try to refer them for positions at the university.
Well, that's a complete design. Are you going to join us next on the 25th? Stephen made the announcement, but I think that it's a very impressive panel. We're going to have, Catherine is here. I don't see Catherine. She's my co-chair. She's not, Steve?
She is on, but I think she's on pause. So I don't know if she's right in front of her computer, but
okay,
again,
we're going to email you, Henry, because I think this is the 25th. And 7 o'clock at night, and Zoom, of course. And I think you need to be on that panel. It's a very impressive panel, ACS, New Horizons, and so on, a number of very strong organizations. And I think that we need to hear from you, because what you just said is precisely what we're looking at. And so are you going to be available for the 25th evening, couple of hours?
If you can send me the information, I can get back to you for sure.
I'll get that from Stephen and your contact information, and we'll make sure that you get something in the morning.
Okay.
Henry, it's usually about a 10-hour meeting, just so you know. So if you can carve that out. Okay, thank you, Robert. And so we're going to keep moving around. I always like to give a little board privilege, so or I should say president privilege. So I'll let Mark go next, and if Roberta would like to add anything as our current and previous one, we'll go in that order. And Mark, please do the honors.
Well, thanks very much. And I will, in such a strong agreement that we are on the same page here, I'll try my best to add without repeating things that have already been said, with which I agree. Those of you who have had insomnia and tried to cure it by reading the last 10 years worth of district need statements know that I've been thinking that that DYCD has been underfunded in what we are now somewhat laughingly called the fully funded years. That it was underfunded all those years because there were still many youth that we needed to engage that did not. So the one point that I want to add to what I hope will be the resolution that you all will consider at some point in the evening's process is a point that grows out of what I understood both Henry and Stephen to say, which is that many, if not all, of the people who serve the programs, the employees that are now at risk of being furloughed and so forth, that they in turn come from the community as well. And it is my impression that every single dollar that taxes do not take from their salaries are reinvested or spent right there in the community again. So in effect, this is resurrecting these programs and ensuring that their continued employment is as effective a stimulus package as anyone could ever design. The money that we will pay them will stay in the community, will build our businesses back up, and will be part of the cycle of growth and reinvestment that we desperately need. And so that's the one additional point, in addition to all the social, emotional, and programmatic points that have already been made, that experts like you all and Amy and so forth have already made, and I don't need to repeat. Thanks very much for the privilege. Appreciate it.
Great. Roberta, anything you want to add? Mute yourself.
Steve, we can move on maybe?
No, I'm working.
Are there more hands up or whatever?
Yeah, just give me a second, Blanche. Roberta, you got to unmute yourself if you want to speak. I don't know how, Mark, can you unmute Roberta?
I have done what I can.
I think I just did.
Got it, okay, good.
It wasn't responding, sorry about that.
Sure.
I think right now our biggest concern is getting funding. Stephen, hi. Hi, Henry. I've worked with Goddard for almost 30 years, and we're facing budget concerns that were never faced before. We have children at tremendous risk, children who are way behind, children who need social services that we can't even imagine, that even if we had a social worker in every school, it still would not meet the need. Henry and Stephen are with two wonderful organizations. Amy is doing a marvelous job at Children's Aid. I don't think people appreciate what kind of stress they're under. That they actually sleep at night is amazing to me. And I think I heard Speaker Corey Johnson today, and Ben Kalos talking about funding, and they are requesting that the mayor put back some funding. But I think the one thing our community board can do is to really push for funding. These children need services. They need whatever Goddard is doing, whatever Henry is doing, whatever Children's Aid are doing is definitely not enough. It's not because they're not capable, it's just that they need more money to do. These children are so far behind what the services are. So I implore all of you to really think about this, put the pressure on immediately, if not sooner. The city council is going to be doing budgeting in the next 2 weeks. It's going to go to the mayor, and now is the time to really take a positive.
Can I just make 2 comments real quick?
Sure.
Just 2 things. You know, I think and just kind of hearing all of this, and this has come up before in previous meetings with other organizations, that, you know, DYCD, they give you a contract, they trust that you are the agency or the CBO that knows the community, that knows the needs, and can really implement it as needed. But yet, when it comes to making decisions that are critical to the future of programs, to the future of communities, they don't partner with us, right? So what happens is we just get an email. These are the changes. And there really hasn't been any exchange in ideas, of innovations, of anything. There are times when we can offer other solutions, and they don't partner with us around that. So that's the first frustrating thing. And the other thing is, and what I think what most upset me about this whole process is that many of our youth workers have put their lives on the line for the last 3 months. They've been delivering meals to seniors. They've been just doing what was needed, riding the trains in the last 2 months, like just doing what it took to ensure that they were able to close the gap as an organization and as a community. And then June 1st, we have to tell those essential staff that June 19th is your last day because we don't have any funding to continue through the summer. That is heartbreaking, it's heart-wrenching, and it's not fair, because they really have, and they're the lower paid staff of the organization. And yet now we're telling them, after they've done all of this great work, they supported our seniors, supported our supportive housing units within Goddard, and now they have to be furloughed for the next 2 to 3 months because the city has not partnered well with us in regards to how to ensure that there's some funding to continue some work. Sorry to go on my great box, but I just wanted to express that.
Well, I think communication seems to have been a universal challenge of this administration, but I'll stay focused on the youth for today. And let's go. I know that Doug has been raising his hand, and Julian, so we'll go in that order. And then I would encourage either Courtney and Rosa and Bev, if you guys want to chat, just shoot me a little thing in chat or give me a thumbs up, and we'll figure out an order. So Doug and then Julian. Julian said he more had a comment too, but that's what we'll do.
Great, thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you both for coming and for presenting. Very compelling. Clearly, there's a need, and something needs to be done about it. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the here and now. It's clear that in this discussion, we're going to be talking about a resolution that would perhaps support the programs via district need statement or such. But for the here and now, for the next month to 2 months, which I think is really where you're identifying an immediate need that's not going to be covered by any of the long-term proposals. I wanted to follow up on Madeline's comment. I thought it was a great one about expanding your outreach to other organizations, other individuals, either from the neighborhood or beyond, as well as Blanche's comment that she's hopeful that both of your organizations that you're representing can engage going forward. And then specifically, Henry, building off of your affiliation, I think you mentioned Columbia Business School affiliation with a venture program of some type. There's clearly a network in the Columbia Business School, other organizations that have capacity who have done very well external to their programs. But there's also, I would assume, opportunities to, if Steve, if your organization doesn't already have it, maybe you do, but to build out a proposal deck of some type that really communicates the immediate near-term need and how it could be filled by outside resource, because of what you are communicating as clear, the absence of funding has clear impact on the community in the near term. And I just wanted to bring that up. I thought there was some convergence in the conversation that at minimum there may be, if that type of document doesn't exist that can be socialized, that there's probably the capacity within the community to help build something that would communicate that need and how, where dollars would go to and how they would influence and impact, the needs. So just a thought.
Can I ask a quick follow-up question to that, Doug? Are you talking about specifically dollars for youth programming intentionally, right?
Absolutely. The
Okay.
immediate need that you're both communicating.
All right. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Well, I do have just 2 comments about that. There is immediate dollars available. Bill and his wife Gates have donated millions of dollars to community schools to get programs up and running. Bell Extel is donating grants to community programs plus schools to do intensive reading and math tutoring, where they actually even pay the social service agency to have kids in these programs, so you get it for free. There is a lot of private money out there. Garden of Dreams, which is Madison Square Gardens Foundation, has donated millions of dollars to agencies. There is money, but it's very specific in what they're looking for. It's not general enough to reach the 175,000 children who lost their summer programs. So that's a big problem right now. Private donations, corporate donations have completely ceased to exist for many not-for-profits at this point. There are grants available if anyone wants to know about them. I have a whole list of them. But it is limited in what you can do with it and how you do with it, and most of it does not pay for the personnel. Now, that's the problem that we keep on talking about. We've all furloughed 60 to 80% of our staff at this point, and Roberta's right. We don't sleep because we are literally up all night doing 10 other people's jobs. So that is a big problem right now, but there is money that is available. Not so easy to find, but not so hard to get when you find it.
Yeah, and I will add, Doug, I do like the suggestion about that proposal deck. There's definitely verbiage or kind of some writing, some write-ups about kind of what's being lost, like what's that risk and the effects. But I don't think it's as clear as it could be when it comes to the entire youth portfolio and kind of really how it affects and how that would affect the Upper West Side and Harlem neighborhoods. And so I can definitely bring that back to my organization so we can talk further about that and see if we can begin to put something together. I do know also that we do partner with UNH very closely, and so they do a very concerted effort with all of the other settlement houses. So it become a much larger story and appeal to the city.
Thank you. Okay, Julian, I know you said you had a comment that you wanted to make or a question or something in here, so go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't want to take up too much time because I know a lot of questions have already been asked. I just wanted to thank you, Stephen and Henry, for coming to this meeting and sharing. I think this was really informative and really important, and I'm glad that we're focusing on it. the two comments I had to make was the first was about just as what we're going to do as a committee after this. And I mean, I think we have a lot of great ideas for a strongly worded resolution that we can write, especially focusing on the budget. But I'm thinking specifically, I mean, as co-secretary, I've done some work with advertising board meetings. I'm thinking, how can we make our, use our website, use our networks, use our email lists so that we can, create a platform where these opportunities become available for youth and become available for people in the community who can share them with youth. And so I think that's something just I want to put out there that I think we can look into and see how can we mobilize our resources, even though we don't have money to spend, how can we use our networking to promote this? And then the other thing I just wanted to mention is that I think it'd be really great if we could hear from some youth in the community about what they're experiencing and what their thoughts are. There's just one of the through lines of my thoughts about local government and community board is that there's never enough youth engagement, youth participation, and I know we have the HSS meeting coming up, and I think it would be really great if we got some more youth involvement and we heard directly from youth in the community. So yeah, thank you guys for coming again. I really appreciated it.
Well, it's always good for the youth to remind us to listen to the youth. So thank you, Julian. But taken, and I know Catherine mentioned that she's still listening, but perhaps if you could take the initiative and maybe just remind her of that point. I know that she mentioned she's been texting me along the way that she's still putting together her speakers. So I think that's a really good point. Courtney, I know you shot me a note that you wanted to say something, and then Bev and Rosa, if you guys want to mention something, I'll do so. And I know Natasha, I can now see you. So if you want to say something, drop me a line in chat, and I'll make sure I make that happen. So Courtney.
Hi. Yeah. So first of all, again, thank you to both our speakers. This has been incredible to hear all this information. It's heartening, but also really helpful. I had what I hope is a quick question to Stephen. I noticed that you talked about at the beginning that one of the things you guys encountered was that although the DOE said all the kids and the families were going to have technology, that wasn't something you saw was in fact the case. And that flagged for me as a concern, both for the summer when you were talking about so many of these programs moving to online and obviously for the fall. Can you tell us a little bit more, even if it's just anecdotal, about what you were seeing? Where was the gap? Where were these things? Where was this falling down in terms of execution that left so many of these kids and families without that connection to resources that I think we're starting to hear for the summer?
Yeah, so I'm not sure where that data came from that DOE pulled when it came to everyone has it. But we were proactive in surveying our young people from our after school programs, our options program, even our early childcare centers, just to kind of see, hey, DOE saying that you guys have received, did you receive it? And so some families didn't even get a correspondence from DOE. Maybe they missed the email. Maybe they missed the phone call. We have to remember that many, we have some families that have older adults who are not well connected to technology. And so, they didn't have it. And so thankfully, as an organization, we did put together some funds in order to accommodate those needs. And so we went out, purchased tablets, and delivered those tablets to those young people in need. Some we did have to call the schools and say, hey, we spoke to John Doe or Jane Doe, and they do not have a tablet or a laptop, and so can we make sure that they get it? And so there's a lot of follow through on our end to ensure that happens.
Do you feel like do you feel confident that the kids who have them, who need them, have them at this point? Is that resolved? Do you feel like it's?
I'm confident based on the students that responded to our survey, right? And so clearly, I can't say 100% of our young people responded. And so, I'm pretty sure there are some who have been completely disconnected. What I do know with the DOE, they had not been able to really confirm attendance for their daily remote work, right? So they can see when a student has logged in per se, but they don't really know at what level that young person was engaged throughout that entire lesson. And so, for high achieving students, they're doing fine. But those students who were already struggling or failing before the pandemic, like Amy said, they've have gotten that summer loss during the springtime. And so now it's going to be a spring and summer loss for those young people.
I think there's also an economic issue in addition to the DOE issue,
Yeah.
which is many of the lower performing schools or schools by Fred Duggar who we serve, they had struggles getting it. We did the same thing. We bought laptops, we bought tablets, we gave it to them. The free internet service at this point, I know Gail Brewer is working on it. It ends on June 30th. We have another economic issue, which is our parents who were struggling before to pay bills no longer can pay their cell phone bills. And even if they got the technology from the DOE, they couldn't afford a router to even get the internet service. So there's a lot of issues in terms of technology and equality across the DOE. That's a major concern. And with knowing what the numbers are for summer school, it's even, we know who the children are that are going to summer school. And I think you said it well, Steve, those high performing ones are not the ones. It's the ones that now are going to have trouble paying bills, getting on the internet. The other thing about the DOE laptop was it was configured in such a way that they were not able to access anything other than DOE. So that prevented a lot of problems with after school programs being able to get on Zoom and do this extra work with them because they couldn't use their DOE laptops. And in some cases, in schools where maybe 3 kids were in the elementary school, they only gave 1 laptop to that family. So then a parent had to decide which child was on when. So it has been a major issue. I think it's going to be a major issue through the summer and again in the fall.
Well, I'm glad you said that because, Amy, because as you were speaking, I wrote the notes down that, yeah, so you have a laptop and then there's multiple people who need that laptop or that tablet. In addition, there was for our teens especially, they said we don't have headphones. And so I have a shared room. I have no private space to really get into the lesson. And so my younger brother is hitting me. My mom is on a conference call with her job. Where do I go in order to really get connected to school and do the work that needs to get done? And so, you know, there's been a lot of just challenges that I think DOE didn't see. I mean, and granted, I will give some credit. It was a quick response, right? They didn't have a year to plan for this. So I do credit them. There's that background noise again. But, you know, but still, you know, those who were disadvantaged going into it became much more disadvantaged during that time and still are.
Thanks. So I know we mentioned Bev, do you want to, Bev and Rosa, do you guys want to raise your hands? Do you guys want to say something? Okay. Let's have Bev go first because she helped us with our last resolution. So just picking arbitrary points to make decisions. So Bev and then Rosa and then Natasha.
I also want to thank our speakers and Amy for giving such a very vivid picture of what our students and our youth are facing at the moment, given the crisis financially. My son is a teacher in the public schools in Brooklyn, not in our district. And he teaches, he has a very tech savvy group of students because he teaches web design. So in a sense, he was as well prepared for this crisis as anyone could have been in his position. And yet still there are many of his students whom he cannot find. And this is a sort of universal situation that exists throughout the public schools. And I guess what I'm struggling to understand here is whether there's any potential and whether the community board could play any role in this of somehow generating the information that teachers have of who they've lost and connecting with community groups who may have some connection to those students, because the information is not flowing, is my sense. And is there anything that can be done to help it flow, is my question.
I think it's a great question. And I know we have been, as an organization, have been reaching out to those schools that we partner with or that our students go to attend to say, hey, you know, are there any students that you have not been in contact with? Because, you know, many of our kids who don't perform well in school, they thrive in our centers. And so, you know, but the feedback or the response has been very slow to none. And granted, they're dealing with a lot of different things, but we're really trying to support them in this work because it's really important, and we want to make sure that students don't have a bigger disadvantage when school starts in September. And so, but the response has been very small to minimal.
I mean, I would also say that the response has been small to minimal, partly because I think they're writing the playbook as they go, and I think it's been very difficult for them. I'm sure most of our agencies are, like the CEO of Children's Aid is on the mayor's commission to talk about how schools can reopen these gaps. I mean, there's a ton of advocacy going on by the Campaign for Children around this. But I think the reality is we're in such a place of not sure what tomorrow brings that is part of the problem as well.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll go Rosa, we'll go to Natasha, and Matt. I know there's a couple people who I can't see. The main one is Madge, and I'll make sure that I give you a chance to speak if you hear me. And then we have a couple participants. So let's go, Rosa.
Hi. This is a question for Henry, although I don't think it's a question for Henry because I know you keep saying you don't represent all of Columbia. I also work for Columbia. I'm on leave working for Local 2110 as a union rep. I wondered if there's money, I know Columbia has money, grant money available to a place like Goddard who might need money. So does Columbia have grant money for local organizations to help out, especially this summer? And then also a place like Columbia Business School, wouldn't they be able to donate iPads, for example, to local at-risk youth, things of that nature? Again, I know this is probably something you cannot answer because you don't represent all of Columbia, but they're in the neighborhood. I know they have a large endowment, and I feel like that should be possible. I know it's not just a matter of like asking and receiving, it's far more than that, but is there a connection there? If not now, for the future, so that people who live in the community, just like Columbia benefits from now a bigger campus uptown, they're going to be making more money. Is there a way to incentivize them to help local youth? This is important for them as well because they're growing in our neighborhood. The potential, they're going to interact. Kids and Columbia are going to interact, neighborhood kids. So there's got to be a way to make that connection. I mean, I heard something about $100,000. Columbia has $100,000. I know they do. I know they're not going to give it up like that, but it's a much bigger question than you can answer, I know, but I feel like this could be something that can happen at some point. And certainly, I'm sure they can come up with 100 iPads that they can donate, something along those lines. They're in our neighborhood. They should feel like they're a part of our neighborhood and feel some responsibility for the children in this neighborhood. That's it. Thank you.
No problem. I fully agree with, us answering the call as a university. And I know in my office, we've been involved in some local relief efforts throughout COVID for food relief, and then also for small businesses from the community, a loan fund that was created. And I agree that I think it is a necessity that we have some sort of emergency funding that could go towards this. And that is something that that I've been raising, but I plan to continue to follow up on that, because as things continue to develop, it appears that this problem is only getting worse. And, there is a response that is needed. Normally for organizations to receive funding, I mentioned earlier, Columbia Community Services, which does provide grants on a yearly basis. It's not necessarily an emergency fund, but, organizations have applied and been, local organizations have applied and been able to receive funding for things. Sometimes they apply for funding just to buy iPads, but, we've also been involved in facilitating donations for technology through one of our sort of community partners, the West Harlem Community Development Corporation. I know that there's some work that's been done there, and due to COVID and things like that. We can always work to do more. There's always room for improvement. I agree with that, because the problems are not going away; they're only getting bigger. So I thank you for mentioning that. But that is in essence pretty much the ways that we can and have provided support, and I hope that we will continue to increase that.
And Henry, if you want to talk through a strategy, I'm more than willing to make myself available. I am currently a senior leaders program participant with Columbia Business School. And so we were actually entering our third week on campus, and we had to go remotely for the last portion of the program.
Oh, wow. Okay. So we're connected in more ways than a green shirt. We didn't even know that.
Okay. Thanks, Natasha.
Apologies, everyone. As I mentioned in the chat, I do have to jump off, but I just want to say thanks again for having me. And if you have questions that you couldn't get to, just please feel free to email me. I posted it in the chat as well.
Thank you, Henry. Appreciate you coming.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Henry, thank you for breaking your vacation.
You're very welcome, Blanche. Anything for you.
You may be sorry you said that, but anyway.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Okay, Natasha. And just so everyone knows, we're sort of wrapping it up. We should be, we're towards the end of the round. So, but
yeah, no, I actually just wanted to say I had something specifically for Madeline, and I'm actually drafting an email to her right now. So I think I'll just, in order to keep the meeting moving along and short, I think I'll just talk to her separately, offline.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Madge, I see you're here, and I don't know if you'd like to speak, and I'll pause for a minute if you do.
Well, I just want to say one thing, and that's think of something physical for these kids in the summer. That's my only comment.
Thank you. Okay, and then unless I'm missing something, I know we still have two people have stayed with us, Chris and Robert. I don't know if either of you guys want to speak. Chris, I'll let you go first, and Robert, I'm just going to proactively unmute you guys. Asked to unmute. Mark, you may be a little bit better than this than I was last time.
It's done.
It's done. So Chris, any questions or anything you want to ask? I'll take that as what I call the Bueller no always. And Robert?
Yeah, well, I think this is very.
I don't have any questions at this time. I just wanted to say thank you. This is very informative.
It was a different Robert. Robert, it was a Robert in the audience. Thanks.
I think this is a very great and fruitful meeting, and the speaker Stephen Goddard that we know for decades and decades, and Henry and Amy. And these are anchors, that when you develop a community in real estate, you need anchors. So you need your major stores. So these are three of our anchors, and they're very, very, very important to us. And I also begin to wonder, Stephen, whether this way of tackling an issue may be a little more efficient, because HNHC, as you announced on the 25th, and we've hijacked at least one speaker, and we've got other formidable speakers as well. And so this is a very interesting model that we might keep in mind, because the thing that we've been encouraging in the community boards is that we collaborate not only amongst ourselves, the different committees doing partnership, Mark, and working with other community boards, so that so we did this presentation, you did, and then we segue next Thursday into another aspect of the same theme with more material to talk about.
Great.
And so I think that's very happy that I came. You didn't serve my favorite wine, but I'm happy I came anyway. So
I'm taking notes. But thank you for the feedback, Robert. And yeah, Catherine and I coordinated a little bit, so perhaps it's another model. I actually decided to go last and just have one question that would actually maybe be for Amy at this point, and Stephen. And I'm just curious. We talked about private money and sort of grants, but what about private partnerships? I mean, I just was surprised when I heard, how much we paid for Apple iPads, when if it would have been me, I would have asked Apple to donate the iPads, so I would have gone the other way. And I'm just curious, as private partnerships, and I see you raising your hand, can city come in and just fund one of these programs? Can some of these private companies that obviously are in the city, that want obviously to get goodwill, I just think, who leads that? But to me, I think that's the untapped resource, and I see Amy and Stephen both of you speaking, but I'd be curious a little bit of background on that and what can be done, because to me, I think that's the way to fund this stuff, at least short term. They certainly have the money. I'll hand it to Amy and Stephen.
So we did outreach to Apple when this all went down, and they were so inundated by so many different social service agencies that they couldn't fill the need. We are planning on reaching out to them. Staples has been an unbelievable resource. The Staples on the Upper West Side has donated paper, pencils, I mean, you name it, to get to the kids. I think that there are more corporations that are going to be more open to it, but I think when this happens, they got so inundated they couldn't possibly. Old Navy has donated millions upon millions of dollars of clothes to us. We've partnered with West Side Campaign for Hunger, and we're getting food boxes for them up to the neighborhood. So there are opportunities for this. I think that it will probably open up a little bit more in the summer as the need goes down. And I just wanted to make a comment also about physical activity. Unfortunately, physical activity falls into this realm of Department of Health, and it's very limited on what you can do for kids. But, at Fred Doug, we are implementing virtually physical activities that we have never done ever before, such as Zumba and Pilates and yoga and ballet and Latin dance. Now, it is virtual, but we are offering those things because we do agree that it's incredibly important that kids are active. I also want to say that Super Soccer Stars is going to be opening up very small programs, and will be at Fred Doug hopefully this summer, doing some of those partnerships. And talk about corporations combining, we give them our space, they give us a certain amount of slots for our kids, and I know they're at Goddard also in other places. So I think some of those opportunities may open again, but I think a lot of corporations are very taxed also, and they just can't meet the demand that we've all put out there for them.
Yeah, I echo that completely what Amy just said, and I would just add to it. There's definitely a lot of competing priorities when it comes to what agencies want and need, as well as kind of what that national need is. And so, as an example, here at Goddard, we're not only a youth organization, we're youth, we're older adults, we're mental health services, we're housing, so there's so many areas in which we serve. And so as an organization, we have to make a very concerted effort in regards to where we're going to apply the energy to ensure that, we can ensure that that demographic or whatever is supported. I know with a lot of the private foundations, their initial concern was really supporting older programming. And so, like with Robin Hood Foundation, as an example, they're a huge funder of Goddard, and they told us in early April, that they were looking to move some funds to support work around food security, right? And so we had to kind of adjust our approach. So it was no longer about supporting the college access piece, we're moving some of that money to food security. But Goddard is always open to other opportunities and partnerships. I do think as much as we can partner with CV7 in regards to approaching other foundations and corporations, we would definitely be interested in that. There was a question in regards to what could you guys do? And I think Julian said that with minimum funds. And so technology is a great source. One of the great things we've been doing around advocacy is using our hashtags, right? So kind of joining other organizations, finding what those hashtags are that are important to funding youth programs. The one now is, what's it, Fund Youth NYC or Fund NYC Youth. And then we hashtag it, and then we CC it to the city council, to our local elected officials, the mayor, and they get bombarded with these tweets from individuals and organizations about why youth programming is important. So I could definitely forward that to Blanche and the rest of the committee for the board. And if any way we can partner around that, I'm more than willing to make that happen.
Great. Well, and then, just summing it up, and then we'll move on. I just, my feeling is that when we think of private, a lot of people think of foundations, but I think sometimes you can go directly to a company in which they'll have a lot more flexibility. I think they'd be more amenable to funding staff because it makes sense. And number two, I think I heard Amy say that some of the foundations are very narrow and instead of wide. And I'd also say that, sometimes if you go to them, a good piece of PR can be motivated, right? So the business somewhat motivated. And if you get to the right person and say, let's call this the such and such summer of Citibank, and you may catch a business here. I come from the private sector, and I just know that I think that, I know companies, and I know my company would be, we'd be open to those type of things. And it may be harder to do because of staff, and there may not be the head of private partnerships, at each organization, but it's just something to think about. I think we could absolutely get someone to take a specific program and certainly fund it for the summer or something. But again, logistics is not always easy, and I thought to bring it up. Okay, so I think we've done a good job going around. I'm going to be proactive and assume that we want to make a resolution, as we said. I know that Mark has been always very, very helpful in doing so, and I'm hoping he'll do again. And I'm going to just hand it to you, Mark, to ask any other questions, or maybe just lead whatever discussion we have as we lead into that. So I'll hand it to you in terms of how we want to put together a resolution or anything you need from us.
Thanks, and I'm glad to take the first pen, but I'm going to be looking very much at Amy to help me flesh out the facts on which we want to rely. It sounds to me like the therefore clause has already been written, and that is the call for the restoration of funding, and we will make arguments as to why that is necessary. In our last resolution of this type, we also tried to offer an idea about where the money would come from. I don't know that we want to revisit that issue again, since we already said it, and and having said it once, if you put it on another resolution and it doesn't pass with the same vote, then it sounds like we're backing away from it. So I think we should leave that strategic borrowing conversation where it was and move on. So unless I'm here or see hands raised, that is the resolution, that therefore we call on the restoration of funding in order to serve the youth in the ways in which this conversation has said it needs to happen. The reasons why are those that have been articulated. I've made some notes and I'll start to sketch something out. If I could unabashedly put Amy on the spot and say that I would like at first to send the draft to the two co-chairs and you to make sure that I'm not working on an act of fiction here, and to make sure that we make the most progressive case that we can. The case that in very quick summary, because I think you all want to vote and say goodnight, the case would be that the youth are at risk, that this is money that would be well spent, that in effect, the people who would otherwise be furloughed or laid off are themselves effectively at risk, and that therefore this money would be well spent in not only on the youth to be served, but on the people that would be hired to be serving them. And that to a point that I'm going to sort of expand from what Madeline said, if we leave these youth without something to do, mischief will ensue. And that, in a funny way, impacts upon other conversations that are happening right now about transferring funding from the NYPD budget to other social services. And I see Madeline nodding her head, so thank you. I'm not off on a tangent here. That in effect, that initiative can't happen if we are putting pressure on the police with activities that would engage them in ways in which we don't want for anybody. We don't want it for the police, we don't want it for our youth, and we don't want it for the organizations that serve them. That's the sketch that I've got for you right now. I'll certainly highlight the need with respect to the social and emotional learning portion of it. And Amy also shared a particular point about grade level loss or learning loss over the summer that is ordinarily a part of our experience in the summer, and obviously exacerbated because the kids didn't really finish the school year. And with everything that we're doing this year, and certainly in the last couple of months, the equity aspect of this, that we're not talking about starting budget cuts from a level playing field. So that if one agency is underfunded to begin with, an across the board cut that looks like it's even-handed, in effect is doubly or triply devastating to the most vulnerable. So those are the points that I would propose that we put into our resolution. I'll do my very best this time to keep it to one page, and would offer that. I can't make a motion because I'm not a member of any committee other than steering, but that would be what I would propose that you all consider.
Mark, a question?
Yes.
Restore funding to whom? To what? To who?
So essentially it would be to restore funding. It would be to DYCD, because DYCD.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay. I thought you were thinking of SYEP. Okay. Okay.
I think that's.
SYEP is part of DYCD.
I know that. That's why I was asking.
Yep. No, but the arguments we made already about SYEP, many of them apply with equal force here.
Sure, no question about it.
Okay.
Okay, so do we want to vote on this? We ready? Do we need a second and a first and a second, Mark? I always forget procedure.
You kind of do, but if everybody votes for it, I'm
I
going
heard
to.
it's first. There's the second. All right, I got it.
Ira's taking the minutes. He can sort of fill in that blank.
Yes, I heard a couple going. So why don't we do a vote for everyone, especially new committee members? So first is committee members. So what do you, Mark, do we want to raise hands? What do we want to do? Roll call this? What do you think is the best way?
Everybody's on one screen. You can just raise hands.
I can't see everybody.
I'll ask people. I'm gonna, so let's all raise hands, committee members.
Can we do hands on the participants?
I think we got a lot of people talking, whether you realize it. I think we're okay. Can committee members raise their hand? People I can't see, I'll verbally ask them. So
Okay.
I got a 1, I got a 2 for me, a 3, 4. Ira, I got your hand. 4, 5, 6. Blanche, I'm assuming your hand is raising, correct?
It is.
Okay, let me just double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so that's 8 committee member yeses.
Does that include the new committee member?
Yeah, no, I got everyone correct, Blanche.
Okay.
So, and I think there's no no's, right? So Natasha, I gotcha. There was no no's and then no abstentions. So now just non-committee members, could you raise your hand? And I see, thank you, Madge, for putting on your hand. So that's 1, 2, I'm raising but not a non-committee. So that's 3 non-committees. So that's 3, and I'm assuming that's a 0. Nobody, I think that's nobody and nobody. So it's Mark, it's and Ira, it's 8 committee member yeses and 3 non-committee yeses. No no's and no abstentions.
And the minutes should reflect that Dylan also voted yes.
That's fabulous. That's about a half. That's an 8.5. We'll put it. All right.
Sorry, it's mommy time now. Thank you, guys. I thought this was a wonderful conversation. I'm excited to see the resolution. Any help you need, Mark.
So I'm gonna ask a handful of committee members, and Amy, if you have to leave, no problem. We have just a little bit of business for the committee members. So Stephen, I'm gonna thank you. I'm gonna thank Robert and everyone else who's non-committee. If the committee members can just stay on for 5 minutes, we just have a little bit of wrap up. And Amy, if you have to jump off, it's not a problem. So thank you, everyone, and thank you again, Stephen.
Henry, have you gone? Has Henry departed?
Henry left a little bit earlier, and Stephen.
What about Stephen?
Stephen just jumped off.
Okay, fine.
Great. So
Can I just make one comment before the non-committee members leave? If you take everybody on the board that was here in the course of the evening, I've been very busy writing names down. And I would think
Ira, I can't hear Ira. Does everyone have a problem with Ira?
Here in the course of the evening. So I just want to thank everybody.
Thanks, Ira. I think Ira was just thanking everyone and say it was very, it was good to have everyone. You got lost a little bit. but I see you shaking your head. So the only two, the next thing is just to talk about our July meeting. And I don't think, and Blanche, you jump in, and there's a small group here, so a lot of people jumped off. We don't necessarily have an agenda right now. I know that Doug and I know that Courtney had offered a couple sort of specific things as well, and we can add those. But I'm just open to any ideas. And again, Blanche, correct me if I'm wrong, but we don't really have a specific agenda. I think the timing obviously could be very, specific to getting more information across budgets across both youth and education, and that certainly can be a broader conversation. But I get my point is, if anybody has any suggestions either now or over the next sort of 3 or 4 days, and want to offer ideas, please do so. Okay, Blanche, anything you want? Okay, Julian, do you have a thought?
And that's much. I just was going to say one idea. I'm just putting it out there. My school leadership team was addressing. It's a little preliminary still, but it may be more farther advanced in July. Just thinking about if schools to reopen in some capacity next year. I know the DOE sent out their survey about that. It might be worth. There might be more information then from either the CDC or from the DOE about how schools are going to reopen, and maybe it's worth having some input ourselves about that. But then again, that's all relying on information. So maybe that's not something we should do for now, but it's just an idea of maybe even just discussion. What are we looking for if schools do reopen, or do we even think they should reopen? Or it's just an idea to talk about.
Okay, I see some hands. I'll go Doug, then Ira. Doug, go ahead.
I was just going to point out, Julian, that is what we've been discussing in the background as a potential item for July.
Great. Ira, did you want to add something? I just let you know you were breaking up a bit before, and you may again.
I know. I'm actually been doing this meeting on both the cell phone and on an internet, as well as multiple screens. Don't ask. What I was going to say is we're at a number of schools, and there are a lot of discussions going on at each school about different options as how we reopen. We're actually split between 3 schools now. What I wanted to say is, I think it goes back to Amy's discussion about what happens if we lost 3 months already to where we are today, how we lose 3 months in the summer, and if in the fall. That's really the major concern, certainly to parents, if that's what's going to happen. And that's a really big concern to us right now.
Okay, and I think you were breaking up a little, but I heard, about the concerns that Amy said about losing time and things like that from an education perspective. Courtney?
Yeah, I had one idea, and I don't know whether it's a good one or a crazy one, but it came to me today.
All ideas are good. All good ideas.
Throw it out there. It struck me that we keep hearing that each individual school and individual neighborhoods have widely varying needs and challenges going into September. And I wondered if there would be a benefit to inviting some of the heads of the SLCs or anything like that to come on and talk about where they think they might be well positioned and where they think their problem areas might be, so that we could get a sense at a very individual school level where we should be focusing our kind of thoughts and efforts.
It's interesting. I mean, yes, that sounds interesting. And maybe we can get granular at a school level. I think we've been more to DOE level, and that could be something interesting.
Especially if they won't come in and talk to us.
Well, they may after the budget. I'm hoping they will. But do you, I'd be proactive. Do you have, the next thing I'd say is if people have speakers they want to suggest or ideas, we are all ears. Do you have any suggestions, or do you know any local contacts you could reach out to?
Well, the heads of the SLCs or the administrations was what again, this is not a fully baked idea. But that was where I was kind of thinking we could start if we were looking to get granular to understand what those individual concerns are.
Okay. Any, here, I gotta widen my screen a bit. Any other, Bev, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I've been sort of very interested in this New York State Police Reinvention Collaborative that the governor has put forth as a challenge to all the police forces and the local governments. What I'm assuming is that over the next month or so, New York will begin the process of developing a consultative collaboration in order to address what changes the police should, in fact, have attached to them. I think there's a specific issue here, though, in education. And that is that the NYPD essentially had taken over during the Giuliani era the school safety officers. And in addition to that, there's significant numbers of NYPD officers in the schools as well. And I'm just concerned that if a citywide effort is assembled to have this collaborative conversation, the direct school issue and the participation of parents and students and school staff may in fact not be as upfront and part of the conversation as they need to be. Is there any way we could look at what kind of process we feel would truly support the school communities around this rethinking? I think it is a very significant moment.
So I think it's a good idea. I don't have a quick thought on how to execute it. Mark, I'll defer to you just with your experience. Obviously, it's a huge issue and very, very relevant. I don't.
I'm not sure, Bev, if you would allow, I would be glad to talk about that offline to see if we can. I mean, certainly you could have a conversation about it on the order of magnitude that you just did. I suspect that you'd want to go a little bit further and have someone speak to it, or maybe a couple folks speak to it.
Sure.
It would be interesting to see if there's somebody within the NYPD who A, would agree to attend our meetings, which they haven't been doing for a while, and B, who could speak in a collaborative way about that. And then there may be urban justice coalitions who would also be interested in being heard on that topic. But I need to do more homework before I say anything beyond that. But I'm glad to work on that with you if that would be helpful.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and Julian, I see your hand up. I guess my unspoken concern is I think that people may not want to talk about that right yet or not. I know people we've reached out to a little bit have been a little gung shy. So obviously very important, but we certainly want to get the right people together, and if we could, but I'll allow the two of you to chat. I know, Julian, you wanted to add something here?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, some of the equity work I do in schools is completely around this, so I'm really interested in it. I think it would be a really great discussion to have, and it can be had at many different levels. I think it doesn't have to jump directly to removing NYPD from schools, although we could go there, and I actually might not be opposed to going there. But there's also conversations about restorative justice in schools, so using alternative forms than suspensions, which the DOE has already pursued, but can be furthered. There's discussions about metal detectors in schools. We have schools in our district that have them, schools that don't. The Martin Luther King Jr. complex has metal detectors, and right across the street, an equally big school, LaGuardia, has none. And there's a lot of controversies about the discriminatory and sort of racist nature of these and why they're not being removed. So I also, one of the proposals being released there's some staff members in the DOE who came out with a letter of actions they want the DOE to take. One of their actions is transitioning police, the NYPD, out of schools and replacing it under the OSID, Office of Safety and Youth Development, within the DOE. And I have a few contacts within OSID that I work with. And so if we'd be interested in hearing more about restorative justice programs or what the Office of Safety and Youth Development does, I could connect us with some people for that. So just volunteering that.
Well, I think the restorative justice, everything you said is interesting. I think the restorative justice was a unique piece, and I know we've talked about it in the past. So good, I've got these notes. Blanche, anything that you want to add as we finalize?
Are you talking about July? I'm working on September, so.
Oh, so I guess I just got July. All right, so thank you. I'm writing that down. I'm running July. She's got September.
I have a couple of things for September.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, then you will all be getting emails from me because I just realized. But I would say I'm always looking for speakers. So the reason I sort of asked Courtney not to say, it was just we kind of go through our speakers and know that to get 2, you reach out to usually 10. It's not like the 2 you get 100%. I would really love help, and/or if anybody has a friend or people they spoke to that they could be relevant. I think we talked about some. I think July, I'm thinking, can be somewhat not general at a macro level follows up of these important conversations, and we'll continue to reach out to city officials. But I think these next sort of things that you guys brought to the table. Let's continue to sort of think through. But I'd ask you guys. If you say, I know 2 people I could reach out to, Julian has been helpful in that and kind of handled one meeting himself. So delivering speakers as well is not good speakers is important. So you guys can follow up as well.
Let me just comment. There apparently is interest about uniform presence in the schools or not. And Mark made the comment we haven't heard from haven't had the uniform folks in for a while. In their defense, they were scheduled to come, the community coordinator for the 24th precinct in April, but we canceled them because we canceled all committee meetings. At that same time, the mayor instituted a new position called youth coordinator in each precinct. The precinct person has gotten in touch with me and said, she'd be happy to come whenever. Let me find out what they are prepared to talk about. We also have a new commander in the 24th precinct, I think March, Yamaguchi is his name. He said he would come. Let me find out what they're prepared to talk about. They may not want to get into the issues that we're bringing up here. I don't know, but I'm prepared to find out.
Okay, well, if you could do that, and as I think it'd be interesting, Julian, if you could reach out on the restorative justice, because I like the idea of having something constructive. It seems like it's good to have solutions, and that's a very constructive solution. So we've had 2 meetings, like one topic has taken the whole meeting. Sometimes we'll divide it into multiple topics, but I think restorative justice would be a very interesting time, particularly with sort of what's going on, and it feels positive in the sense of we want to offer a solution as well. So if you could do that, I would appreciate that. Okay. What did we do? All right, 8:59. So we beat the 9 o'clock, and I can go. So unless anybody has anything else, we'll adjourn the meeting. I appreciate everyone's input. Happy to have all the new faces, and I look forward to a great resolution. I would ask that if you want to give an opinion, please do so right away. Understand that our meeting is pretty close to the board meeting, so we don't have 30 days. So when that thing goes out, if you guys can comment, it's kind of, it's speak then or forever hold your peace. And sometimes people have put in some comments later on that we've kind of moved further along on the document. So please, everyone, add their thoughts because they're very valuable. Otherwise, have a great night. And
this is a great meeting. You guys did great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Blanche.
My pleasure.
Okay.
I thought the 2 speakers were great.
Yes, they did great. You all did great. All right. Good night, everybody.